Welcome to the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA District 5810. I am Greg Tepper. That is the man they call Josie.
Well, hello,
Andrew Utz.
Greg Tepper. I interrupted you there.
No, it's fine. Nobody's here to listen to me. It's not like I have anything important to say. How are you?
I'm good.
Things good?
How are you?
Things good this week on the week this podcast is being released?
Things are good this week.
Yes. Can you believe that thing in the news?
I cannot believe the
Wow.
thing. Can you believe the thing coming up?
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Who could have seen that coming? And I've got to tell you, the sports.
Oh, my gosh. The sports are just, they're up, they're down.
That team. I can't believe they did that.
That team or the other team?
Oh, well, that's a great point. But did you see those highlights from last night?
Oh, the highlights.
I can't believe it.
Man.
Anyway, thank you for spending part of your day with us. This is the RYLAcast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA District 5810. We're so pleased that you have decided to join us. Today, we have a very special guest coming up here at the second segment. We'll be hearing from one Rebecca Egger. Rebecca Egger. Some call her Becca. Some,
not all.
Some call her Rebecca. We'll dive into that and many more things.
The hard-hitting questions.
As we've mentioned before, we are allowing our guests to essentially book the whole show. I'm not sure why we've given them so much power.
It's a lot less power on us.
It's honestly, we are simply puppets at this point, doing the bidding of our guests. But we've asked them to choose a word for the theme of this. Becca Egger has chosen the word empathy.
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 Right. I just want to enunciate that. That's with an E. And so, here, with something to think about empathy, is Josie.
Well, thanks. Thank you, Greg. Empathy. So I looked up the definition of empathy. The ability to understand and share the feelings of another.
Mm-hmm. Sounds about right.
Yeah, it does sound right. Which is not sympathy. My lovely wife let me know that there was a TED Talk. I think it was a TED Talk by Brené Brown, who happens to be a research professor at University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work.
Okay, social work. I'm with you. Social work.
So she talked about the difference between empathy and sympathy,
mm-hmm.
and I highly recommend that. It's like a 2 or 3 minute video to describe empathy. And one thing that I took away from that was she said, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about that the other day when I was riding home on the DART light rail system. And right before we went underground...
Did we suddenly just, veer off into public transportation talk?
We did.
Wow. That was a quick transition. Normally I see it coming. You have blindsided me, sir.
Well, no, I just jerked
the wheel. Okay.
And we're going my way.
That's fine.
So I was on the train, and at the station right before we went underground, there was a young kid. I say young kid. He was probably 10 or 12, who got on, looked like he was coming home from school, and I couldn't understand what he was saying, but he had just gotten on the train and burst into tears.
Mm.
And turns out he was not on the right train. And we were headed into an area where you don't get cell service.
Oh, no!
Yeah. So, and I'm a couple rows back in a seat, and I don't know what's going on, but it's not good. And I see a gentleman, a couple rows in front of me, motion to the kid to come sit down. And so the kid comes and sits down, and I hear the guy saying, "Hey, what's going on?" And I couldn't hear the whole story, but the gist of it is he got on the wrong train, doesn't know where he is, knows where he needs to go. And strange gentleman said, "Hey, you know what? I did this one time. They just really need to make these signs a little bit easier to read, but if you just hang in there, we'll get you on the right train."
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way these two individuals knew each other. And so we got to the next station, and he said, "Okay, kid, we're getting off here, and we're going to get you back to where you need to be." And they left, and about 3 or 4 people on the train, thanked the older gentleman, and started talking about, there's good people still in this world, and I thought that paired really well with empathy, because in a split second, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation where you've done something very wrong and you don't know where you are or how to fix it. Mm-hmm. And that just the way that guy took action, I thought was really nice to see. I don't know if I would have done the same thing as quickly as he did, but I just thought that was a really nice story.
Yeah, that is, and I think that sometimes we're all just kind of looking to make sure that we're not the first person that's ever experienced something. Like,
Yep.
Like, I'm a big believer that there's no such thing as normal. Like that we all kind of have our own experiences, and so if somebody says, "Oh, well, is this normal?" It's like, well, that's not really a thing. I mean, I want to be clear. Consult your medical professional if you feel like something is abnormal. I want to be very clear about that. But like, I think I've learned that a lot since since my wife and I had our kid. It's easy to freak out about a lot of things, and there are the internet is full of people who are ready to just tell you, hey, this is the worst thing in the world, by the way, like WebMD, you know what I mean? Things like that.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, it turns out the kid has an extra limb. Wow, I just didn't expect that. But to me, I feel like that's something we're all just searching for, is somebody to say, I looked this up, and there's a great blog post of the inestimable power of, I'm sorry, dude, that sucks. Right?
Right.
Sometimes that is all we want, is be like, yeah, I'm sorry, man, that sucks. Like,
yeah.
Because that's kind of, in a lot of ways, that's kind of the core of empathy, is saying, all right, well, that's just that. Like, I get that. Like, your feelings matter. Your feelings are valid. And even if you can't fix it.
Right.
Just being able to say that.
And that's the interesting part of empathy is, the difference between empathy and sympathy is, to be empathetic, you're not supposed to fix it. We just want somebody to say, that sucks.
Yeah.
And just hang out with me here for a minute, and not at least, the Brené Brown talks about, sympathy is, well, at least you're not this.
Yeah.
That's not really empathetic. But I thought it was an interesting story, and what was more interesting is that's not my original topic when discussing empathy.
Wait, what? There's more?
There's more. But wait, there's more.
So the DART train just happened.
The DART train just happened.
Whoa, okay.
I know, and it's just, that's another thing for another discussion for another time, how, I don't know if things happen when you're thinking about them, or you're just more aware of things happening. Yeah.
I know that. Like if you start thinking about, like, boy, I'm hungry, all you'll see are fast food commercials.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But no, what I was going to talk about, and still will, spoiler alert. Empathy seems to be a tricky word from my brief experience with researching the topic. Simon Sinek, I watched a talk. It was Live to Lead, and he gave a talk on empathy and perspective. And I thought this was a really good talk about leadership and more of like an adult workplace role, where empathy is being concerned about the human being and not just their output, and that leadership is not about being in charge, but it's about taking care of people in our charge.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that. The word, I would not have chosen those words because it's kind of a trip me up a little bit. But leadership is not about being in charge, but it's about taking care of people in our charge.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and just the idea of where you're going. Don't be so eager to be the boss and in charge of everything. Make sure you're caring about the individual. And I think my work does a really good job of this. Is, we're all people first. People first. You have a family. So make sure you understand what people you're in charge of or in your work group. You don't even have to be a boss. Make sure you're invested in what they think and feel and value more than you're invested in what they produce.
Yeah.
And so on that note, what are you doing to help create an environment that allows people to do that?
Me?
Well, just...
Oh, you're asking?
I stared directly at you.
That was the funny thing, is that you stared directly at me and, like, what are you doing? And, like, darted your eyes over towards mine. No, I think that's a great point, is that, like, it's not enough to be empathetic. You have to foster it.
Right.
Like, that's the mark of true leadership.
Yep.
Is making sure of that. That's interesting. So, we had a public transportation story. And some great quotes.
Well, thank you.
Good job, man.
Yeah. So, and just buzzwords, Brene Brown, who has a Netflix special on...
Really?
Recently
Never heard of
dropped.
her.
Yeah, I hadn't either until Joni showed me that video, but it just dropped in the past couple days.
Okay. We'll check that out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Josie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the real star of the show, Becca Egger, will join us. Stay with us here on the RYLAcast. Josie, if you wouldn't mind,
I would not.
Could you walk over to the giant, oversized, comically large door here to the studio? Go over there. Go. This is bad. This is a bad
That's just
theater
me
of the
walking
mind thing.
over there.
I don't know why you're clomping like a horse over there.
I've got my clogs.
Anyway, could you open up the door? Do we have somebody at the door?
We do.
Who's there?
We have the one, the only, Becca Egger.
Oh!
Hey!
Becca Egger joins us.
Why has it got to be a large door?
So, here's Becca. Just zooming past
I think we cut out there for a minute.
Becca, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Are you?
Fellas.
Are you?
I'm super excited.
Are you? Good.
I am.
Good.
I nodded, but no one knows that.
Yeah, this is, you got to remember.
Yes.
Audio
This is an audio medium.
Huge loss
That's
for
fine.
everyone at home, but that's all right. We'll get there.
We're doing good. How are things?
Things are great.
Yeah.
Things are super.
Things are very good.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
we're going to start this interview the same way we start every interview,
Great.
which is we're going to want to hear your RYLA story. So if you could tell us your RYLA story,
Awesome.
that'd be great.
Yes, with pleasure. So I attended RYLA in 2004, which was maybe a little bit, I don't know, it feels like a fluke, but I also don't really believe that. But like I think I went with like a casual friend to the counselor's office to check our GPA or something, because that's what cool kids do.
I got to tell you,
Right?
when I think of what all the cool kids in high school are doing,
You gotta
they're just
check.
getting the latest on their GPA.
You got to check. And then while we were in there, he was like, hey, I heard on the announcement something about a camp. And I was like, I guess I'll pick up an application too. So it was just like, I got an application. And then I applied. Fun fact, there was one other person who applied. They didn't do interviews or anything like that. The counselor had us write an essay. This was back in the dark ages. And so I was like, oh, great. So I wrote some... I did just because I was up against like literally the valedictorian of the class since I had checked my GPA. I knew. And
What high school, by the way?
What high school? How high school?
How?
Yes. Go Bulldogs.
Shout out Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm. And so I wrote an essay about leadership, and then my friend who was also applying told me that she wrote an essay about how she went camping one time. So I felt pretty sure that I would get in. And she is literally brilliant and a genius. So I think that might have been an act of divine intervention to keep her from outshining me, which I will take. Anyhow, so attended camp, and absolutely, I always say it saved my life. Not in a like living sense. I did not. I wasn't in that dark of a place, but in a quality of life type of way that just gave me a lot of direction and cleared a lot of fog and gave me relationships that helped me see how I could have healthier relationships outside of camp as well. And so then that was 2004, and nobody's gotten rid of me since. So that's my RYLA story.
Try as they might.
Try as they might. I open the giant door and I walk on in.
The door stays the same size regardless of who's walking through it. I just want to be very clear about that. Okay, but you've been involved basically ever since, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's I've never been back in a cabin, but I was on what we now call ACA, but was activities at the time. I was basically an assistant to the staff when I was an assistant counselor, and then stayed on staff for a few years. And I've weaseled my way into working with the advisory group, which is our group of students who come back after camp to advise the next year's camp during their senior year. And then from that group, we get the assistant counselor. So I've worked with that group fairly closely for the past, I don't know, 7-8 years, something like that. That's been super fun.
Was there an advisory group? Like, was that a role that you created, or was there?
100%. No, I think yes and no. I think there's always someone who helped Mark or helped Dana, and then it just kind of grew. What I've learned over my RYLA tenure is that whenever Dana has a gentle suggestion, it's actually a really good idea. And so as I started kind of honoring those gentle suggestions, that kind of all those added up to kind of a job of keeping track of different information and developing different modes of communication, et cetera. And so it existed before me, but it's different than it was then.
Can I ask a weird question?
No.
Because you're okay.
Well,
carry on.
Thanks, everybody.
So I made the point a couple of shows ago about how sometimes camp doesn't click with people until later.
Right.
When did it click for you?
Oh my gosh, like hour 7.
Really?
Or
Like
something
right
like
away?
that. I was like, my people.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, which was really cool because I think, in retrospect, I think my junior year, I probably was dealing with some mild depression, as most humans do at many points in their lives. And so I went into it pretty nervous that I wouldn't feel anything because I'd been feeling pretty like a dull pencil. And so it was such a relief when it did land really hard, really fast. It was really pretty cool.
So the lessons that you learned way back when in 2004, how do you use those in your life today?
In my life today? Well, I think a lot of what I learned was I remember being amazed by the quality of people around me and how kind everyone was, and everyone was so talented, and everyone was so ready for a new challenge and all these things. And I was like, man, the people here are different. And then by the end of the week, I was like, no, they're not. I'm different. I am giving people a chance. And I'm not, I grew up literally, my parents moved to where I grew up like 2 weeks before I was born. So I've literally lived in the same place my whole life, K through 12 in the same school system. And stepping out of that and being the only person that I knew in a whole big group of people for a week made me realize how many biases I had. And so, and how I put people into boxes, and, everything that, you trash about your hometown or your small town. I was like, it's not them, it's me. It might be them too, but that's not my business. And so, that's definitely one of the several, lessons that I try to keep with me. Now it's hard, obviously, but to realize that, that people are way cooler than my biases give them credit for.
That's a good title for this podcast.
Thank you.
We should probably rethink that.
Yeah.
Write that down.
Write that down.
Thank you. So what's your deal? Like, what do you do? What do you do now? Tell people who you are today.
Who I am today? I would love to say I'm a retired English teacher. I don't know that that's true. I'm just not currently employed as an English teacher. I taught high school English for 6 years total, and really enjoyed that. And but now most of my time is spent managing our household, managing our 2 little girls, being managed by
And
our
not so
two little
little.
girls. Yeah, they're there.
They're
there.
I saw your youngest,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah, she's like
you've been
turned-
replaced
Yeah.
by a much larger child."
Yeah, she turned 3 the other day, which she was not happy about. I said, "You're 3." She said, "No, I 2." But by the which she did when she turned 2 as well. She said, "No, I 1."
Change is
So,
hard.
I don't know. Yeah, her grammar hasn't changed, but her age has. Anyhow, yeah. So do a lot of managing of them and being managed by them. But then professionally, I'm a photographer.
A very good photographer,
Y'all
I
are
might
so
add.
nice. Y'all are really nice.
Josie said it,
Well,
not
you
me.
said it.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
are nice.
Thank you.
You are fine.
You can stay.
So one thing we are trying out that I think is going to stick is
This is actually a Becca Egger idea too, because
you know-
she was the one who gave me notes on the podcast, and this
Is this the part where you compliment your guest?
yes.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Not on the air.
So we sent you a list of words
Yes.
for you to choose from.
Yes.
What word did you choose?
I couldn't think of a joke fast enough. I chose empathy. That's the truth.
And why?
Because that's a word I've been sitting with a lot recently. I had the opportunity to speak at camp this last year, and it spoke on conflict resolution, and then I was able to take that talk and use it a couple times at a fellow RYLArian school where she is on staff, and so it kind of it morphed and changed and realized how much of that was about empathy, about to resolve conflict well, how important empathy is, and also in my development professionally, I've keep coming back to empathy and how that is just so it's necessary. It's just a mandate for doing my job well, and I don't think I'm the only one.
Oh no,
Probably a lot of jobs, like a couple at least.
at least 3,
Yeah,
minimum 3.
couple 3.
So before Josie asks you to give you the floor to plug something that you're passionate about or
Yes.
something you're into right now,
Yes.
I must point out that you and Josie share a very special bond,
Yes, we do.
which is
Again, I can't think of a joke.
you both have hair,
Yes,
but also
mammals unite.
mammals with hair. But I think that's actually what makes a mammal. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. No, you got a spouse there.
Yes,
At
not
RYLA.
each other. That would have been cool too.
Yeah, it would have been.
I'll be the first to admit that. But yes, I never had a high school sweetheart, but I have a RYLA sweetheart. Aw, that's cute.
Well, sorry, I had a frog in my throat.
Moved him to tears, folks. That's what's going on this end.
No, go on, Becca, please.
What do you want me to say?
Well, who is it?
Oh, it's Jeff, my husband.
Oh,
Jeff Egger. Woo!
Jeff's in the studio. He's waving. Full disclosure. Okay. Okay.
What do you want
then
me to tell that story? What do you want me to do?
Yeah, I guess more importantly is like how has because Josie said something that really stuck with me whenever you were discussing you and Joni is that's one fewer thing you have to explain to somebody.
Oh my gosh.
Because that like is that a bond, a passion that you guys both share for the program?
Yes. Well, and the thing is that any volunteerism, especially something on this scale, is like just a necessary element of volunteerism is sacrifice, and this takes a lot of sacrifice time wise for our family, particularly for me in this season. Jeff's job is super demanding, so he doesn't have the time to volunteer the way he would like to, and so his volunteerism is covering for me, so I can go. And it's this last year at camp, I counted, and I think that he took our kids during that 6 days or 7 days or whatever it is that I was gone. I think he had our kids every moment that he was home, and I think there were like 8 to 10 families that he bussed them around to, so that like just to have childcare during the week while I was gone. And so that's not normal. And like most people would not do that. But he loves me, and he probably did it, because I love him too, and I asked him to.
Aww.
But really, I think what it comes down to is that he understands the magnitude of what's going on, and he sees the long game, and he knows that like this isn't just like to go have fun, and so let's weigh your fun versus my fun. We're looking at the long game and the investment we're making, and the investment we've already made, and to have that in common is I don't know what it looks like to not have that. And I really admire the folks who are able to stay involved whenever their families start growing that are not looped into camp, because that takes a lot of empathy on the
look at that.
on their partner's part.
God, I'm glad we opened that door.
Man.
You got something?
Huge door.
I got nothing. Actually, I do have something, as you alerted me to earlier.
That's quick.
I know, just quick thinking. So, do you have anything you would like to plug? I'll leave it open. Provide a suggestion like movies, TV shows.
Yes, I do.
Oh.
Because I listened to this podcast, so I thought this might be good.
Oh, a listener.
Yes.
You're the one.
5 stars. 5 stars. Yes, so my plug is for another podcast, my second favorite podcast. Yes, it's one that NPR produces. It's probably fairly well known to those who are who are fans of this medium. But Invisibilia is my favorite podcast other than The Swing, clearly. But it's I just like NPR. I think it's great reporting, but then also it does to tie it back again. It's there's stories that make me stretch my empathy and make me, because I think that this is a topic that I was learning about the other day, so this is not from my head, but just how empathy can be used a little bit as a weapon more than a tool. Maybe in our generation and those younger, of like who deserves our empathy and who does not, and Invisibility is one of those podcasts that makes me wonder, okay, at what point does someone not become a human to me? At what point do I count you out? And they encourage it, and through it I'm encouraged to back that way up and be a better person.
Well, Becca, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us. Was this as scary as you thought it was going to be?
It was it was good.
Well, and if I may, when I saw that you chose empathy for your word, there's no other person in the world who I feel like could speak to empathy better than Becca Egger.
You know what? That's super kind. Thank you. Can I pass that back, though?
No.
Somehow today I was thinking, I can't remember my line of thought, but I was like, Josie is like the most encouraging person that there was. So look what you just did. You just fulfilled that little thought of mine. Thank you.
A self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
You did it.
You fulfilled your own prophecy.
Great work.
That was good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Becca.
Good talk, guys.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you.
And our thanks once again to Becca Egger for coming up here. She brought her whole family.
Yes.
Her nuclear family. She didn't bring her, uncles.
That's true.
But she did bring her daughters and that boy she's always hanging out with.
The guy she lives with.
Yeah, the guy who lets live in her house.
That's right.
Her and the girl's house.
Yes.
Anyway, we appreciate Becca Egger for being our special guest and someone to talk to. We'll now close it out with something to leave you with. When people bring up Ernest Hemingway, I feel like that is a little bit haughty.
Yes, Hemingway.
If Hemingway is your favorite author, I don't know. I feel like that. I am always very tentative about telling people that I really like Ernest Hemingway, because Ernest Hemingway has a certain way of writing that can be a little bit it could be a little bit of a lot. You know what I mean?
Okay,
like
yep.
being Ernest Hemingway. And Ernest Hemingway, of course, there's a lot of baggage there and the whole Florida Keys thing, but he was a very prolific writer in the middle of the 20th century, rather, the last century. And in any case, he did have a quote from one of his lesser known books. Across the River and Into the Trees is the name of the book. Across the River and Into the Trees. It's not as popular as Old Man in the Sea. It's not as popular as The Sun Also Rises or For Whom the Bell Tolls or anything like that. But he has a book, and in it is something that I was thinking about when I thought about empathy. And it just kind of varies. Sometimes he can be very he can be kind of hard to read, in my opinion, but he can also have very succinct, excellent ways of putting things. And he just said, this is a quote from that book, "When people talk, listen completely. Don't be thinking about what you're going to say. Most people never listen." And you were talking a lot about empathy, and that's kind of been the theme of this entire show. And I feel like that phrase, listen completely, is something that that's the first step towards being empathetic for somebody.
Right.
Is, if you're telling me about something that's bothering you, or you're telling me about something you're struggling with, if I'm not actively attempting to truly understand the situation, if I'm just thinking, oh, yeah, okay, well, Josie, something's going on, and I'm thinking otherwise, I'm not going to be able to empathize fully. And that, I feel like, is something that's tied in very closely is listening and empathy. That, because we were talking about it, sometimes all we want is to be heard.
Yes.
And there is certainly something to be said for just being there, but that next step is being an active listener and being actively involved in what somebody else is saying. And so I thought about that Hemingway quote a lot while I was thinking about empathy, because that to me is the first step. Because how many of us, and I am certainly guilty of this, probably more than I should be. How many people, when we're having a conversation, are just thinking about what we're going to say next?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm definitely guilty. As you were telling me that quote, I was getting ready to write it down, and then when I realized where it was going, I was like, you know what?
It's so weird.
I'm focused.
Well, and especially in a society that's like more and more distracted by the day, the art of being an active listener and being an active participant in a conversation is the first step. If you fail at that step, you're never, like, any empathy you're going to offer is at best hollow, in my opinion. And so I was thinking about that a lot when the topic of empathy was brought up. Not just because I wanted to impress everybody that I've read Hemingway.
This guy reads Hemingway.
Right? That's the thing. That's what's so hard to bring up. Like, if, for example, there's certain authors like that. Like, for example, if you tell people that, like, you've read Crime and Punishment, like, they're like, oh, you listen to Dostoevsky, huh? Okay, well, this guy. There's like a certain, I don't know. But Hemingway, he could be a bit of a blowhard, but sometimes he really hits on something, and that was something that really struck me. So that is your something to leave you with, and with that, we'll leave you. Thank you for listening to this, the RYLAcast. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. If you did like this podcast, please consider giving it a rating and leaving a comment on iTunes or Google Play, and tell your friends. Tell your friends about this weird podcast that you listen to. So, anything else?
No, I was just going to say thank you to the 14 ratings we have
on
Apple. 5 out of 5 stars. We have no 4 or below stars.
So don't blow it. That's going to do it for us. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. Thanks again to Becca Egger for being our guest. Josie, thanks for joining us.
Greg, thank you.
Let's do it again next week.
Let's do it.
We'll see you next time.